Great. Thank you so much, Cameron. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today for the National Alzheimer's and Dementia Resource Center webinar, Sustainability, Keeping Dementia Programs Active Years After Initial Funding Ends. The National Alzheimer's and Dementia Resource Center, or NADRC, webinar series is supported by the Administration for Community Living. Before we get started, I will turn this over to Erin Long from the Administration for Community Living for a brief welcome. Erin?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join this. We're kind of bragging on some of the work that we've done over the years. I want to thank Renee Longarini from the Southern Maine Area Agency on Aging and Martha York from the Wellwise Services Area Agency on Aging for telling us how great they're doing. And with that, I'm going to send it back to you all because that's what you're here to hear about. Thanks.
Thank you, Erin. So as you heard, today's presenters are Renee Longarini and Martha York. Renee Longarini currently serves as the Deputy Director for the Southern Maine Agency on Aging, where she has worked for nearly 13 years. Renee has worked in several capacities at the agency, including Site Manager and Director for the Nutrition and Adult Day programs. In 2016, Renee was involved in the development and implementation of an expanded client assessment. This assessment touches on social determinants of health and resulted in a 75% increase of internal referrals, which linked clients to additional resources and services. The expanded client assessment is still in use today and has been adopted by agencies nationwide. We also have with us today Martha York, who is the Community Education Coordinator at Wellwise Services Area Agency on Aging in Michigan. Martha has been a licensed social worker for over 30 years and a master trainer of several evidence-based programs for people with chronic health conditions. She also specializes in dementia care, providing education and support for family caregivers. Martha is passionate about providing encouragement to people with varying health concerns and going through life transitions to help them learn tools to better self-manage their conditions in ways that optimize wellness and improve their ability to do what they want to accomplish in life. At this time, I will turn the presentation over to Renee Longarini to begin. Renee?
Thank you so much, Sari, and thank you, Erin. As Sari mentioned, I will be talking about the Southern Maine Dementia Capable Network with a specific focus on our Meals on Wheels expanded assessment tool. As Sari mentioned, I have been with the Southern Maine Agency on Aging for about 13 years now. And at the time of this project, I was one of 2 assessor specialists that helped build, modify, and pilot the assessment tool that we'll be talking about today. The purpose of the SMAA ADI project was to expand a robust foundation of dementia-capable services to provide a more comprehensive and sustainable network of training, referral, and person-centered services. The target population included people with dementia living alone in the community, caregivers of people with intellectual disabilities who are aging into dementia, and behavioral symptom management training and expert consultation for family caregivers. Today, I will focus on the expanded Meals on Wheels assessment tool that was created as part of this project and still being used today. Next slide, please. Some of the objectives of the project were to develop a mechanism for identifying people with dementia living alone, generating internal referrals for other identified needs, making more effective use of the federal requirement for regular in-home assessments of Meals on Wheels clients, optimizing our unique opportunity to observe vulnerable clients in their own environment and to determine their need for additional assistance and services, to provide staff with increased awareness and ability to recognize signs of cognitive changes, especially in those living alone, and to build additional needs screening capacity into the existing Meals on Wheels assessment process. The Meals on Wheels program provided us with the opportunity to utilize trained staff and volunteers to assist in identifying clients living alone that may be showing signs of cognitive decline or dementia. The Meals on Wheels program itself allows for an organic and natural relationship building opportunity between our staff and volunteers and our clients. Building on this trust, we were able to use the meal as a warm handoff so that our trained resource specialist could assist these clients as part of this program, but also in connecting these clients to the additional information and resources they need. Since we already had a federally required eligibility assessment and in-home visit for all Meals on Wheels clients, the most logical and sustainable approach was to build our expanded assessment off of that. Oftentimes, our staff and volunteers are the only ones that are seeing this highly vulnerable population on a regular basis, making it easier for us to identify changes in behavior and pick up on red flags. Therefore, we trained both our volunteers and staff on signs of memory concern and red flags to look for, and we continue to do refresher trainings on an annual basis. I will share more information on what we look for in a few slides. Next slide, please. The primary goal of this project was expanding the in-home assessment visit to increase opportunities for wraparound services, with further goals identified under that umbrella were maximizing opportunity offered by the home visits and assessments, increasing assessor skill set for identifying a broader range of needs, increasing service utilization by Meals on Wheels clients, increasing Meals on Wheels volunteer skills to identify and report special needs and red flags, increase cross-program collaboration, and finally, to improve agency-wide dementia capability to meet the growing need. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, we focused on 2 areas of training. The first one being signs of memory concern, which could look like many of these: jumping around from topic to topic during conversation, sleepiness during the day, frequent forgetting or forgetting recent and important things, asking for the same information repeatedly, repeating the same things in a short period of time, unable to follow directions, not able to carry out routine tasks like buttoning clothes, difficulty finding words, doesn't know date, time, season, or location, confused on who people are, decreased problem-solving ability, mood swings and changes in personality, and loss of interest in signs of depression. Next slide, please. The second area of focus was watching for red flags. Some red flags might look like inappropriate food storage, expired food, garbage not thrown away or taken out, pets not being fed, inconsistent eating habits. You may notice freezer meals piling up, losing or misplacing things, no interest in personal appearance or grooming, not dressed properly for the weather, sudden confusion, noticing unpaid bills, or getting lost in a familiar area. Next slide, please. Steps towards reaching our goals. We started by developing the expanded assessment tool, training staff to pilot the assessment tool during initial and annual home visits. During the pilot, making necessary changes and adjustments to the tool to ensure maximum impact and sustainability. Offered clients referral and linkage to services for needs identified through the use of the tool. Referrals were made through our existing internal referral system, and a follow-up was provided by a SMAA resource specialist. During the pilot phase, we took very careful note on which questions were prompting responses and how long the assessment was taking. The federal eligibility assessment took about 20 to 30 minutes, so our goal for the expanded assessment was to keep it no longer than 45 minutes. We were also aware that the more familiar the assessors got with the tool, the quicker and easier it was going to be for them to navigate through it. Because one of the goals of the assessment was to identify other needs and services, there were a couple of areas that we asked similar questions in different ways. For example, we would ask, do you have difficulty paying your bills? Oftentimes, the client would quickly answer no to that question. Later in the assessment, we might ask, what are your biggest concerns with your expenses? Or do you have any concerns with paying bills? In finding through that question, they may demonstrate that they're having to choose between food costs and medication expenses. The second answer would contradict the first a little bit. In this instance, we decided to keep both of those questions in the assessment. But another example would be when we cover transportation. We might ask the client something to the effect, very broad, do you have any transportation needs? Again, we would notice that the client would be quick to say that they didn't have any needs. However, we would then ask the question further along, are you able to get to all the places you need to go? And more often the client would answer that they weren't able to get everywhere that they needed to, and that they would express some difficulty in getting to the places they needed to go. And so then identifying the need for transportation resources. In this case, we took out the first question, but we kept the second question as it appeared to prompt a more reliable and accurate response from the client. Next slide, please. So in addition to the federally required eligibility questions, we also ask questions in the following categories: financial, memory concerns, chronic conditions, falls history, housing, medication, isolation, socialization, transportation, abuse, neglect, exploitation, home safety, legal issues, and caregiver concerns. Next slide, please. When using the tool, we found internal referrals increased by 75%, from 1 in 15 to 1 in 5. In the original required eligibility assessment, we would ask one blanket question: is there other information or other resources you are in need of? Only about 6% of the time would a client identify another need based on this general question. By drilling down, asking more questions, and being more specific in what those needs and resources might be, we found that number jump up to about 20%. We were fortunate enough to have an internal process and mechanism in place to process these internal referrals and a team to handle the increase in those referrals. It also allowed us the ability to track what those needs were, so at any given time, we can see what our clients' highest needs are, whether it's housing, transportation, nutrition, health insurance counseling, or other items. Next slide, please. Challenges and lessons learned. Thinking about the sustainability of the assessment tool versus doing this for the grant thinking. Determining which topics and questions to include. Time challenges, knowing how much time is appropriate and making sure we weren't taking too much time. Training non-social workers to ask sensitive questions. Understanding program and department workflow, and breaking down silos. I think the piece here that made the biggest difference in successful sustainability was really understanding the program workflow and embedding what we wanted to do into that workflow. This project was the catalyst for breaking down silos in creating a much more client-centered approach to everything we do at SMAA. It has allowed us to continue in that same spirit by creating our One Smile leadership team, who meets monthly to strengthen this cross-program approach in collaboration. Next slide, please. Our sustainability plan. Expanding the work from our 2 pilot locations in York County to include all 8 of our nutrition sites across York and Cumberland counties. Normalizing best practices and embedding the assessment tool into our daily workflow. Building upon the federally mandated Meals on Wheels eligibility assessment to create the expanded assessment allows us to utilize Older Americans Act funding. Providing annual refresher training to our Meals on Wheels assessors, and allowing additional support for our Meals on Wheels clients through 2 new programs, Warm and Crew and our Phone Pals telephone reassurance program. Next slide, please. Project successes. The assessment tool created has continued to be reviewed, improved, and used for nearly 10 years now. Agencies across the state and nationwide have adopted the use of this tool or an adapted version in the work that they do every day. It continues to allow us to identify additional needs of our clients by taking a more client-centered and holistic approach to service provided. Next slide, please. I've included my contact information should you want to reach out with any questions, and I want to thank ACL for granting us the opportunity to do this work. I will now turn it over to Martha York for her portion of the presentation. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Renee. And wow, what an amazing and impressive project. Really exciting to hear about it. So what I'm going to speak about today is how we are sustaining our dementia programs in Michigan through a collaboration with the area agencies on aging and our state unit on aging. Next slide, please. I will be showing how the Michigan Area Agencies on Aging partnered with the State Unit on Aging to create an updated 3-part dementia caregiving webinar with some new facilitations tools and a train the trainer session. Next slide, please. So originally, the ACL grant program design came to the Michigan State Unit on Aging. At that time, they were called the Michigan Department of Community Health, and they were awarded funding for 3 years, plus a 1-year no-cost extension between the years of 2016 and 2020. That revised work plan encompassed several activities, including a brief caregiver consultation protocol, a dementia-specific options counseling, a supportive Meals on Wheels program for at-risk persons with dementia, and some family and individual consultations for dementia caregivers using an evidence-informed brief intervention protocol. Now, there was also a component where we were delivering an evidence-based program called the Savvy Caregiver Program under the title of Creating Confident Caregivers in Michigan. Initially, we were providing this 6-week, 2 hours per week program using 6 different area agencies on aging, but several additional organizations were added to that program delivery later on in the project period. Also later in the project period, this grant produced a 3-part webinar that had 3 1.5-hour evidence-informed dementia education sessions, which were entitled Developing Dementia Dexterity. It's kind of a mouthful, but the Developing Dementia Dexterity program it built upon the Savvy Caregiver program content and added in some brain health presentations that were developed initially by the Administration for Community Living, the National Institute of Health, and the CDC. And this program was provided virtually to caregivers, to staff, and to the public with an aim to increase dementia awareness, healthy brain information, skill building, and all of this in a more condensed and convenient platform. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges with the delivery of these two different dementia education series were that as an evidence-based program, creating confident caregivers required it to be a 6-week program with 2 hours per week and in person at that time. So the problem that we found is that caregivers couldn't always carve out that amount of time away from the person they were caring for to attend a training such as that. They had to incorporate travel time and respite care arrangements, and that was a little bit difficult. We found that the developing dementia dexterity design, with it being more condensed as a 3-week program and offered at only 1.5 hours per week virtually online, this was in some ways a preferred method of delivering concise, accessible information so we could enhance caregiver expertise. But we were still having some difficulties with the name itself. The developing dementia dexterity wasn't quite clear when we went to market it and promote it as to what people would get out of the series. So in 2022, due to some new licensure requirements for creating confident caregivers and some of the content of the developing dementia dexterity program, we learned that we either had to stop running those programs or modify the current existing curriculum. And the Michigan Area Agencies on Aging really wanted to retain this vital program. We saw it as an opportunity to update the program a little bit with some new content, delivery tools, and even an updated name. Next slide. So why move the series from the State Unit on Aging to the Area Agencies on Aging? Well, actually, the State Unit on Aging doesn't technically run programs. This was kind of unusual. And the Area Agencies on Aging were already experienced in running our evidence-based programs. We used Title III monies and ran those, as well as providing caregiver supports, caregiver education through Title III. We also typically run those programs ourselves and then report the data onto the State Unit on Aging. During the pandemic, we had developed a statewide collaborative of Area Agency on Aging program coordinators, and that existed as a co-facilitated monthly experience with our Michigan Department of Health and Human Service staff partners. So that's our State Unit on Aging, and that's actually where we drew some of the content experts to team up with the State Unit on Aging and use this opportunity to revamp the program. Once the 3 slide decks were updated and completed, they were posted on ACL's NADRC website, and the State Unit on Aging at that point chose to kind of end their involvement with any further project updates. But we, as Area Agencies on Aging, really wanted to pilot the program first and get some feedback from attendees for program improvement, just to make sure we were on target with the timing and the content. So we developed our own 10-question program evaluation form, and this was housed by the Area Agencies on Aging as we piloted the newly updated series. We also felt very strongly that we needed and wanted a train the trainer opportunity to make sure that we were having continuity of program delivery across the state and quality assurance. So we applied for some additional grant funding and developed a train the trainer to do just that. I also want to note that currently there is work being conducted on developing a Hispanic translation of the 3 sessions and adaptations for Asian populations as well. Next slide. Next slide, please. So in 2022 and to 2023, this team of content experts from the Michigan Area Agencies on Aging came together with the State Unit on Aging to update the 3-part webinar series with some very practical ideas as well as some vital dementia caregiving education. And it was really an exciting time. You'll notice that the first thing we did was change the name. So now we renamed it to our Dementia Caregiving Series, which was a little bit more clear as to when we went to market it, what you would get if you attended this 3-part webinar. You'll also notice that we were able to update the PowerPoint design itself with some brighter and more appealing and contemporary colors. We moved from that burnt orange color and the black heading to a lighter blue with a white background and some fresh and updated graphics. In the original 3-part slide deck, there was also a bit of redundancy in some of the sessions. And so we felt this was our opportunity to reduce that redundancy and update the content so it was a little bit more fluidly organized. It flowed a little better as facilitators and had updated content, which was bringing added benefit to the attendees. The newer formatting also gave us greater ADA compliance, so it was easier for people to view. And what was critical is we wanted to have detailed facilitation notes so that there could be continuity and a fidelity of sorts across the state when you are presenting the 3-part webinar series. And we wanted it to be easy to reproduce and make sure that there was consistent messaging, no matter if someone took the program in one part of the state or another, they should all receive the same great content. Next slide, please. So here you see the format of these newly updated 3-part webinar series. It was designed to be a 3-part series that we do once a week for 3 weeks in a row. And the first hour is typically information sharing with the content of the PowerPoints themselves. Part 1 focuses on teaching about the impact of dementia on brain functioning, things like how it affects communication and reasoning and judgment and their ability to stay on task or pay attention. It's so much more than just memory loss, and we wanted to use this as a foundational piece for the whole series. Based on understanding that impact of dementia on the brain, we then go into some more helpful types of communication strategies and more effective ways to communicate with someone who might be experiencing dementia's effect on their brain. Part 2 goes into more of a dementia staging, where it walks people through how to more effectively and enjoyably engage their person in meaningful activities, and how to involve the person with dementia in their own activities of daily living or other tasks. We include a short activity demonstration video, which is very helpful in showing people how to structure an activity and simplify it so that it's something that gives joy and purpose and meaning and involvement to the person that they are caring for. Part 3 then moves on to how do we view responsive behaviors that people with dementia may be experiencing? How do we address some of the things that might be more challenging in a caregiving situation? So we share some practical tips and strategies for caregivers on how to intervene with things like wandering and exit seeking, bathing assistance, sleep disturbances, repetitive questioning, things, behaviors of that sort. And it also emphasizes caregivers' own self-care and some strategies for doing just that, taking good care of themselves, but also building their network of support. After each 1-hour session, we have the option to build in a half-hour for question and answer time, doing some problem solving with the attendees, resource sharing, and just basically some caregiver support. And this extra half hour can be eliminated if the facilitator needs to shorten the presentation, but actually most of us are finding that we do include that extra half hour and find it very beneficial for caregivers. This can be also the beauty of this program. There's a lot of flexibility. It can be provided in person. It can be provided virtually. Some of the organizations like to use just part 1 as a standalone training for a good introduction to dementia education. And if time is limited, then that might be a nice option for some training. But we also find and this was a learning experience, that if someone missed one of the sessions in our 3-part webinar series, then they could actually attend a future webinar and pick up the 1 session or 2 sessions that they missed, because it's all the same content each time that we offer it. So we're really enjoying that kind of flexibility in meeting caregivers' needs. We do notice that many times caregivers do have things that come up and things that get in the way of them being able to complete a 3-part series. So having that flexibility is working well for us. It benefits the family caregivers, the informal supports. It's also useful for care home staff and assisted living facility staff, and even our own colleagues. So you'll notice on the bottom of this slide that you can find this new content on the NADRC website by clicking on the link to the Michigan Caregiver Series there. Next slide. I don't expect you to be able to read this slide, but I just wanted to show that having detailed notes for the facilitators was a very valuable piece of this redesign. We felt that developing a solid tool that would be easy to use as a facilitator was really critical in making this program easy to deliver and sustain. We pooled ideas from various content experts as to what we wanted in that wording, and we found that it was very easily replicable for consistent information sharing and delivery across the state. We also built our own Train the Trainer series, where we go over leader expectations, facilitation tips, and even some additional marketing strategies. Next slide. So some of the lessons that we learned is that this process took much longer than we expected at first. We thought we were just going to take out some of the content that we could not use any further and plug in a few new things. Well, it took much longer because we wanted to obtain permission for updated content use, and that entailed obtaining some written agreements that were signed between the State Unit on Aging and Dementia Friends, as well as the State Unit Aging and the Rosalind Carter Institute. We also found that reaching agreement between numerous content stakeholders as to what we felt was important to maintain, to update, or to eliminate in this updated webinar series just took some extra time for buy-in and negotiation. That did lead to a bit of a longer gap in service delivery while this process was taking place, but we were so happy that we took the time to do that and really create a user-friendly tool that we were very proud of. Negotiating opinions on the design and the formatting of the PowerPoints took added time, as well as we wanted to make sure we were aligning with the State Unit on Aging requirements for ADA compliance. We also needed to consider where to store these new PowerPoints in a way that would be accessible for facilitators across the state's area agencies on aging. You'll notice that we just said in the previous slide, anyone can access these now through the ACL's NADRC website. But we wanted to have a Train the Trainer with a manual that showed some continuity of how we were going to deliver this across the state in Michigan. So we piloted the program. We received some feedback from the attendees so that we could monitor for additional program improvement needs. And the next slide will show us some of the responses that we got through our 10-question post-attendance evaluation. So we were very, very pleased with these results. You'll see here that 96% of attendees said that they felt more informed about the impact of dementia on the brain. 89% felt that they learned skills to communicate more effectively with the person they were caring for. 81% said that they feel more confident in their ability overall as a caregiver. And 83% recognized the importance of self-care and said that they learned skills to reduce their caregiver stress. 92% of attendees felt that the leaders who facilitated the program encouraged them to try new skills, and 100% of the attendees said that the content was explained in a way that was easy to understand, the sessions were kept on schedule, and they would highly recommend this program to others. We were very, very pleased with those results. It sounded like we were on target with what our aim was with the project. Next slide, please. Here you see a few direct quotes from that program evaluation. One person said, "I thought the teacher was very encouraging and included everyone when asking questions. I felt she did an outstanding job on answering questions that participants had, and I would highly recommend this course." Another shared, "I am not as far along in this journey as others, but I learned what I should expect and will keep in mind these suggestions when the time comes." And another said, "The facilitator did a marvelous job. Love her caring, calming, and compassionate demeanor. Lots of practical ideas that caregivers truly need. I was impressed how much they packed into just 3 short sessions, but also appreciated that they did so because it's hard for caregivers to find time to receive the vital information that was shared." Next slide, please. So this is how we are sustaining it in Michigan. Number one, I do want to say that we just really value it, and we've been very committed in making sure that we are continuing this program. So we utilized Train the Trainer one-day training with a manual included where we went through different facilitation tools, and we showed people these tools are very easy to use. And because it is such an easy program to deliver and you only need one person and they don't have to go through any special licensing, it was very efficient for staff time to reproduce this and to do it regularly. I know I myself put these on about every other month. It's a very easy series for me to facilitate and offer to our community. What's also nice about this is that the materials, the PowerPoints, can be sent electronically to attendees. So there's a cost savings with not having to mail and print and do other things that would have been expensive. Marketing wise, we decided as the area agencies on aging to have a co-branded flyer. You'll see on the bottom of this slide, it's all 16 of our logos showing that we have included buy-in from area agencies on aging across the state. We shared with each other best practices, best practice techniques, but also some sample social media posts and press releases so that we could promote it in our own region. And all of this was allowed to be, we could utilize our funding through Title III-E to help support our efforts and sustain this program. Next slide, please. So here is that sample flyer that we came up with. It shows the content of what someone could gain if they come to the program. It shows the 16 co-branded logos on the bottom. And then what we do is every quarter we take that section in blue and we just update it with all of our virtual offerings, which shows varied dates and varied times. It's available, very person-centered kind of promotion and collaboration between the area agencies on aging. Next slide, please. So we felt there was a great return on our investment for the area agencies on aging to collaborate with our state unit on aging. With us co-branding and sharing our virtual options, we are reaching more people, including rural participants. And we've shared best practices, but by offering not only what I might be offering in my region, I can also offer what's in another partner's region. So it's a more person-centered planning where the person can take a look at it and say, well, this day and time works better for me. And it doesn't matter if they're from my region or from someone else's. So we have a broader array of what we offer to community members and caregivers. And if you do the virtual option, it does eliminate transportation issues, weather barriers, respite care needs, things of that nature. We do occasionally offer respite care so that someone can attend even a virtual program, because we do want to show support for our caregivers to be able to attend and get the great content. We are finding that by banding together, we are also getting richer data collection, and our co-branding itself leads to greater image recognition for the area agencies on aging. But ultimately, it benefits our attendees. They have an updated content. It's truly skill building. It's informative as well as supportive for caregivers. And it has been a very gratifying experience for us as facilitators across the state. Next slide. So here I share my contact information. Thank you so much for listening and attending today, and just for the opportunity to present. So I will turn it back over to Sari for questions and answers.
Great, thank you so much. We can go to the next slide, Cameron. So we want to thank everyone for attending today. As you heard, both of our presenters today, their projects started through grants from the Administration for Community Living. So if you're interested in learning when the next round of Alzheimer's disease programs initiative funding will be announced, you can sign up for notifications at grants.gov and search the term Alzheimer's disease programs initiative. You can also, I believe, sign up for alerts on that site. If you need to contact us, you can email NADRC-webinars@rti.org. And at this time, we are going to move to some questions and answers. So we'll start with a question that came in for Renee. Renee, one question that came in was asking about red flags and warning signs. The person was saying that they're really excellent, but can you tell us a little bit about how you developed them?
Yeah, absolutely. So rather than starting our own efforts or duplicating efforts, we definitely tapped into dementia experts in our area. We tapped into different resources that were focused on things exactly like this. We did, staff team members did different trainings. So we participated in TIPA snow training. So we really took a look at all of the resources that were available to us, and we honed in on those, and we kind of picked the list based on some of the more common things that we might see within the home visit.
Great, thank you. I want to move to a question from Martha. Someone was asking if the Train the Trainer materials are available for use. And then after you answer, I just want to show everyone that's on the line where they can find your materials on our website. So let us know about that Train the Trainer manual. Is that available to everyone at this time?
What people can do is reach out to me individually, and we can discuss the Train the Trainer manual. We wanted to develop something specific to Michigan, so it is something that we share widely with all of our partners in Michigan. But beyond that, I'm certainly happy to have conversation with others about use of the manual.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to do a quick, Cameron, I'm going to grab the screen from you and just show everyone that they can find where they can find the materials. So if you've never been to the NADRC website, you can get there at nadrc.acl.gov. This is what it looks like. And the way I find the Michigan caregiving materials, the training series, I just typed in Michigan. And there it is. So you can find the part 1, part 2, part 3, and these are all the speaker notes. These are also all 508 compliant. So if your organization requires 508 compliance for materials that you present or post on your own website, that is something that you can keep in mind. So I will stop my share, and Cameron, can we pull those slides back up? In the meantime, I can go to the next question. So can you talk a little bit, a lot of people are very interested in how you really have sustained these programs. I know, Martha, you're using Title III funds. Can you talk a little bit more about how you use those funds? And then Renee, can you talk about the funding mechanisms you use? If either of you have done fundraising for these, have you applied for local or other grants? Can you just talk a little bit more about how that works for your specific programs? So Martha, do you want to start? And then we'll go to Renee.
Absolutely. So right now we have a lot of flexibility in Michigan with how our Title III funds are shared for use for caregiver supports and caregiver education. We are in the process of outlining some differences on reporting for fiscal year 2025, but during this current fiscal year, if it's kind of a one and done, like that session 1, that's usually done through aggregate reporting reporting numbers. And if it's more of a one-on-one with caregivers specifically, then that would be Title III monies. If it's being used for other staff trainings, then that would be a different funding source that we do not use the Title III funds for.
Great, thank you. Renee, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned in the presentation, we basically took the federally mandated eligibility assessment and we've incorporated that into the assessment tool that we use now. So it's a couple of different parts. We start with the eligibility piece and then we go into some of those other category areas that touch on the social determinants of health. So we've pretty much embedded it into our home delivered meal program. So although we had this grant to get it going, we basically use our Title III funding. So it's part of the workflow that we already have in place. So our assessors who work through our home delivered meal program are the ones that go out and do the eligibility assessment and utilize this tool to be able to identify those other needs.
Great, thank you so much. So another question that came in was asking for you, Renee, and does the assessment continue to increase referrals to other supports? And if so, how are you sustaining your ability to respond to newly identified needs? Not you individually.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's a great question. Obviously, we saw the greatest jump when we first started to use the tool. So as I mentioned in that slide, we saw that 75% increase. Since then, over the last 10 years, it's remained pretty steady and pretty consistent. So it hasn't jumped so far around that we have to make any major adjustments with our team, but we do build our team based on with the idea of what our client needs are, and also what the volume is. But as I mentioned, the volume remains pretty consistent. It does stay up there. Things that we may see that might change. I mean, there's ebbs and flows in the number of referrals that we get, like with anything else. But I think what we really keep an eye on is what that wait time might be, as far as how long it takes a resource specialist to get back to that person with the identified need. So we're really looking at that. It's normally between 2 and 3 days. So if we get that internal referral, it's about 2 or 3 days before a resource specialist will make a call back. Sometimes there might be a higher need that's flagged. And in that case, we might assess a little bit differently, move somebody up if it's an emergency situation. But that's what we really keep an eye at. And we've seen that it pretty much stays within that window. If we see it getting longer than that, then we will take whatever steps we feel necessary to make sure that the clients aren't waiting too long for a call back. I hope that's helpful.
Very helpful, thank you. So another question that came in is asking if you can talk a little bit about with, sustaining these programs over years, what are the things that you kind of kept from day one and what has been more challenging that you've had to update due to, I don't know, let's say a worldwide pandemic or other things that may have happened. So can you talk a little bit about things that have stayed the same and other things that may have been challenging and you had to adjust?
I can go first on that if you'd like. So first of all, the three-part Developing Dementia Dexterity series was developed prior to the pandemic. And at that time, it was a little bit more clunky, if you will, because not a lot of people were using virtual options, doing Zoom presentations or things like that. But what we found is that it was absolutely glorious because it was something that we could continue to produce during the pandemic. And we all became so much more skilled at facilitating via Zoom, sharing best practices, teaching other people. And still to this day, I'm still assisting people all the time with the webinar, saying, have you been on Zoom before? Do you need some help with that? We can do a practice session. We can give you a loaner tablet if you're in my region, right? So we're finding that it's just a much more natural fit now and is glorious. But a lot of my area agency on aging partners are returning to also offering this in person because we need so much more caregiver support. And so they're finding that they like the flexibility of being able to say, okay, maybe it's winter months and people don't want to get out so much in Michigan, so we might do more virtual programming. And in the summer, we might do more in person. So I think for sustainability, having that flexible option is really working well for us.
Great, thank you, Renee.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, part of the success in the sustainability of the assessment tool for us, and one of the benefits of it is the in-home visit that we were always doing prior to the pandemic. So it goes back to that relationship building and that trust building. So when we have an assessor in the home and we're doing that warm handoff with a meal, it makes it a lot easier when there's that visual component as well as the discussion and utilizing that assessment tool. We find quite often we're able to get more information from the client when we're one-on-one in person. So obviously the pandemic presented a challenge for us because there was a lot of that time we could no longer go into the home. So we were doing our assessments over the phone. So although we still utilize the tool, and I don't have the data in front of me, I would imagine that we might have seen a decrease in the number of internal referrals, possibly because we were lacking that one-on-one in person. So, but I am happy to report that we're back in person again. But I do think that's a big piece of the success, is really building on that relationship and that trust.
And are you still able to do the virtual if you need to then, Renee? Like if there's no other way to get to the person?
We absolutely, we do. And again, it's a little bit more challenging when it's over the phone, like really trying. So the assessors really try to hone in on some of the things that they may be hearing, knowing what those cues might be, and really diving into potential problematic areas, so that they can focus on the things that they're hearing from the client that they might need, more assistance with.
Now, you may have said this, but someone just asked, so I want to make sure everyone hears it. Is it specifically the home delivered meals drivers that are doing the screening, or is it another staff person?
It's a staff person. So we have trained assessors. We have volunteers who deliver the meals, and then we have trained assessors that will go out. And normally what will happen, typically our process is on a particular day that we schedule the assessment, that assessor will most likely take the meal delivery with them at the same time. So they're not going empty-handed and they're presenting the meal at the same time that they're going to do the assessment. So again, it's kind of about that handoff and providing a tangible item when they arrive. So it's two different people. And then there's the regular Meals on Wheels volunteer drivers that deliver the meals on an ongoing basis.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have time for a few more questions here. So one person asked if you see any role for your public health departments to assist with the programming that you're offering. Have you partnered with public health departments at all, or do you see any role for them? And Martha, if you would like to go first, go ahead.
Absolutely, there would be an opportunity for partnering. I think we all run into people that are experiencing dementia caregiving situations. And so what we would like to let people know is that there's this free resource in your community that can help support your caregivers. And then what's really nice about it coming from the area agencies on aging is we consider ourselves experts on aging, that we can get them plugged into other community resources kind of full circle. In fact, we do a lot of that. As the half hour for the Q&A at the end goes on, I try to take note of who needs some additional follow-up and might need to get plugged into their health department or other community resources that we have. So there's a natural fit with referring people to the program, but it also comes full circle back to the community with making sure that we're helping caregivers navigate the resource systems that are available.
Great, thank you. Renee?
Yeah, I completely agree with Martha. I don't have much more to add. I mean, partnerships are they're very important to what we do, and just raising that awareness. And like Martha said, we consider ourselves the experts in aging and being able to provide the information that our clients need. So just raising that awareness, working with community-based organizations to be able to, allow for as many people as possible to know about the services we provide is extremely crucial in what we do.
Great, thank you. So I just want to, I'm going to share my screen one more time. So Renee, this is a surprise for you. We do need to update this, but because you sent me a new updated assessment recently, but we do have the expanded assessment on our website as well. So for this one, I just typed in, you guessed it, Maine, and you can see that the manual is here and the assessment form, and we will get that updated to the most recent version after this session. So thank you for that. Let's see. So if we can maybe touch on this last question. Someone has written in and talks about how they work for a state Department of Health Services and they're working to help their contractors build in sustainability. Are there best practices that you have found through your work that you can share? You want to start, Martha?
Yeah. Oh,
Or
I was
Renee?
just,
Either one. Sorry.
okay. Sorry, Martha. I was going to say, as I mentioned in the presentation, Sari, I think for us, the most important component and piece to think about is really thinking about what your current process flow is, what your current workflow is, and really thinking about how you can incorporate any tool, anything, any practice change or anything you're going to do, how you can incorporate that into the current workflow and process flow of what you're doing. I think that just increases the chances of sustainability for the organization and the team if you can do that. I would say that's my one big piece of advice on that. Martha?
Beautiful. So for me, with the dementia caregiving series, I would say a best practice is making sure that you have a really strong facilitator who knows what that means. That your job is not only to present information in a way that people can latch onto and absorb, and your skill building and your teaching and your educating, but your role as a facilitator is very unique when you're doing dementia caregiving, to supporting the caregivers, to encouraging them to have a voice, to ask their questions, to find support and resources, and to feel validated and maybe not so isolated. I think a best practice is really making sure that you have a skilled facilitator who knows how to draw people in that way, and to not just look at this as an education tool only. It really is about building that network of support and encouraging people to figure out how to reach out and where to find the things that will help them in their role as caregivers. Then everyone benefits. The person with the dementia benefits, the caregiver themselves benefit, and our organization certainly benefits by knowing that we're giving a good quality service.
Great, thank you so much. So if either of you have, a 30-second last thing that you want to say, feel free to do that now, and then we will close out. And if not, that's fine too. But thank you both for being here. And Martha, any last words that you want to offer, or Renee?
Well, I want to say thank you, first of all. This was a really exciting opportunity to present what we're doing. And I would just say, keep on keeping on with the dementia caregiving trainings, because there's such a need in the community. And most people, by the time they come, they say, oh, I wish I had heard about you 2 years ago or 4 years ago. So latch onto these new tools. They're there for you to use.
Thank you. Renee, anything that you want to add?
I just want to say thank you again. And if anyone has questions, if they go in and take a look at the assessment tool and have questions, I encourage anyone to feel free to reach out, shoot me an email. I'm happy to discuss further or answer any questions anyone might have. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for joining who is on the webinar today. We want to remind you that our next webinar is coming up super soon on April 23rd. We'll talk about strategies to address social isolation and loneliness for people living with dementia and their caregivers. You should have received registration information via email. We are going to send a reminder for that webinar and an announcement about our May webinar this week. So keep your eyes open for that. If you need to reach us, I sent out a chat with the email address. It's NADRC-webinars@rti.org. And we are going to be so pleased if we see you again. Thank you so much, Martha and Renee. Your presentations were great, and we thank you for your participation. So take care, everyone, and we will talk soon. Bye-bye.